I hear someone else on there.
Good morning, everybody. I think you might be able to hear me, but thank you so much for joining us for this presentation using skill-based volunteers, the basics. We're so thankful to have Bill Hustrom here today. He has been helping individuals and families improve their communities through North America and overseas for more than 30 years. Bill began his career working at the Utah Special Olympics, where he served as a project director. And then he moved on to working at the United Way of Utah. And he has continued on with lots of different volunteer experiences since. So I'm going to tell, Bill can tell you a little bit more about that. But I'm just going to go ahead and pass it right over and let's get started. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bill.
Well, good morning, everybody. I feel bad that I'm not there in Florida in person with you all. And it's not only because we had our first snow yesterday that I say that, but I always enjoy visiting Florida and our great volunteer network in Florida. It's a strange experience not being able to see everyone and see the enthusiasm of so many good people. A little bit more background about me. I've been in the nonprofit sector for only 3.5 decades. I'm not sure it shows over the camera here, but I'm sure if in person you would have been saying it to yourselves, oh, he looks way too young for that. I know you really wouldn't be saying that, but you'd be polite enough to say that. So I'm thrilled to be able to share with you just my excitement and love of volunteerism, and in particular, my love and passion for skills-based volunteering. And we will have, of course, we have a chance to ask questions and chat along the way. We'll be going through some slides, and at the end, we'll do some breakouts where we can have a chance to discuss with a little more detail what we're talking, some of our topics here. So looking forward to being with you today. Let me just first, as you probably have already seen, the Volunteer Florida has, from the Corporation for National Community Services, has 8 volunteer management practices. This is really kind of focusing today on the market research and the community needs assessment side of that. The market research part we're talking about here. We're also be talking about marketing research a little bit in a later session, which is number 3 in this discussion. And the community needs assessments is really what the needs are that volunteers are trying to meet in the community. I'm going to take that one just a slightly different twist on that. And I'm really kind of asking the question, what is the real need for, why do we really need skills-based volunteers in our community? And I'd love to see if some of you would bravely just type in some responses here of what you think would be just positive. Why do we really need skills-based volunteers in our communities? And there's various reasons and rationales that people express on that. But I'm trying to understand, see if we really understand why we're needed. I don't know if the messages are, if you have anyone not sitting typing here, and Audrey, if you're able to catch any here. So we have increase the impact of, so Sarah says increase the impact of nonprofits. Clarissa, they help train other volunteers. That's great. Do we have some more ideas? I'd love to get just a few more ideas. Increase, oh, I like some of these. Increase our daily impact for projects and fluidity on the job. Lots of great ideas here. Experience, knowledge, and passed down. That one's actually a tricky one. I really like that one. Look at all these great ideas of why we need them. I like Brittany here, what you've said here, to engage them in our process so they can feel a bigger part of our organization, to gain skills. Those are some great ideas. Anyone else that want to throw another idea out or two? Improve the workforce of the future. I like that. Support the mission. Engage residents, give them a self-responsibility and accountability. And that one, I think, I want to talk more about that one in a minute. As an emergency response agency, be able to help resilient community. I like, oh, there's some great ideas here. Almost like we have a lot of you that could be facilitating this workshop with these great ideas. Yeah, oh, there's some great ideas here. Thank you for your comments on that. Let me share with you a couple thoughts on that as we move forward this. The traditional response for most people when we talk about skills-based volunteers is for a nonprofit or volunteer organization to do that which they could not afford to do otherwise. And I appreciate that response. But I've been doing a lot of reading this last few months during this interesting summer that we've all had. And I want to share just a couple of other thoughts why I think it's critical. And feel free to keep adding more ideas here as we're going through. I'm hoping that some of you are familiar with Alexis de Tocqueville, a French diplomat. Alexis de Tocqueville came to America in the 1830s, 1820s, 1830s, and wandered this new land to discover what made our communities different, what made America different than everywhere else. He's probably considered one of the first researchers to really understand the dynamics of community. And I think, frankly, to even understand what beginning movements of volunteerism in America. He shared the quote that the health of a democratic society may be measured by the quality of functions performed by private citizens. Alexis de Tocqueville discovered that what made America unique was that neighbors helped each other in ways outside of government. That they just did it in communities, that they reached out and supported each other, and that was just a tradition found throughout his warning of America. I would contend that in today's world, that need for us to keep reaching out is probably more important than ever before. I consider myself a bit of a student on community, and showing you here just a list of some of my favorite authors and experts and researchers on community. On the top left, I have a couple of books by John McKnight. If any of you have ever had a chance to read some John McKnight's work. John's real premise is that there's a natural caring system or this natural desire to help people. In fact, John would go on in his book that he did with Peter Block in Abundant Community, and he would describe that often the formal systems have eclipsed what normally used to naturally happen in communities. The idea that in a community people just help each other is an idea that has always strengthened our society. And I think those of you in the volunteer sector know that. If you continue on that genre, go down to the bottom left here, I just have a little headline from a quote from a researcher by the name of Felton Earls. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Felton Earls, but Felton Earls out of Harvard had a multi-million-dollar, multi-year, multi-generational study and in Chicago, and used cameras driving down through neighborhoods trying to understand what made neighborhoods stronger and weaker. His research aligns with some of the basic research of Robert Putnam in Bowling Alone and some of John McKnight's observations that the number one thing that strengthened neighborhoods was the idea that neighbors knew each other, i.e. connected. And the second one was that people had felt a sense of self-efficacy, that they could do something about a problem, that they had the power to make things better themselves. So think about that when it comes into volunteerism, that in skills-based volunteering, that we actually have a chance to make people feel like they're part of a solution. They are part of a solution, but that whole idea of giving them the feeling of the power of a solution is part of what makes volunteerism unique and important. So this idea that there's this natural capacity of people to want to help. And as I have this discussion with people about people wanting to help, I think of this concept of any of us who are walking down the street and a little 4-year-old child stumbled and skinned their knee. There's not a one of us that would not want to offer consolation and console this young child. There's this natural desire that we want to help people. And sometimes when we get older, we create more restraints from wanting to actually do that. And volunteerism allows us to pull that part back in to strengthen us. So this idea that I think that volunteerism, that skill-based volunteerism today, is probably more critical and more needed in our community, not only because there's more to be done in our nonprofits and in our government volunteer organizations, et cetera, but that I can think of in recent history has been a need to bring people back together to really work with neighbor and align around a common cause. So what I'm really trying to just say is the work that we're doing is really important. And if you take the headline on the book on the very bottom right by Robert Putnam, How America Came Together a Century Ago and How We Can Do It Again, volunteerism really is what I think one of the secret recipes for bringing us back together. So with that, let me just go on and start sharing some examples of skill-based volunteering that I'm really just pulling from my own community. If I could travel the season here for a while, I would have had a chance to be able to find these examples in your communities. We have a question: how do you balance on what should be a part of your work and what SBV could support? I'm not sure I know what we're saying there. Maybe someone can help me on that question, but let me see if we can come back to that as we're going through this. SBV skill-based volunteering, that's really slow on my thinking. Sorry about that. I reminded you it's a couple hours earlier and it's still dark outside here. But this balancing of our work that we really can make a difference. And I just want us to realize that volunteerism is not just designed to get things done cheaply. There's so many more side benefits in so many ways. I don't want us to forget that. So let me go through and just start sharing some ideas here. I'm going to talk about Matt. This guy does not look old enough to be a psychiatrist. I realize that. But Matt is a friend of mine. And Matt came to me probably now 6 years ago and said that he really wants to make a difference when it comes to childhood issues, and particularly with anxiety and depression in young people. If you're not aware, throughout America and actually throughout the world, there's been an increase of anxiety and depression among young people. And he said, well, I'm a busy psychiatrist. I have a full practice, but I want to do more. Little sidebar principle there. Often it's your busiest people that will volunteer with you. Often it is your busiest people that are so focused that they'll make a difference for you. So don't let someone being busy be your obstacle there. So Matt helped start a program that we use in our community called Everyday Strong. Everyday Strong is a program that helps our young people understand the need for them to feel safe, feel connected, and feel confident. The idea that we have in today's society is that children are probably safer than ever before physically by all the protections in schools and neighborhoods, all the, from child safety seats to everything, but they don't feel safer. They don't feel more connected, they don't feel more confident. So Matt put together this program that started blossoming in our community. One individual, one volunteer, his credibility, his energy led a whole volunteer movement around that. He then put together a booklet called Everyday Strong Resilience Handbook, and now we have a special one for educators. By the way, there's a website there on the bottom, everydaystrong.org, if any of you want to look at his work that a volunteer was able to do. And it just grew. One skilled volunteer, it just grew. He then brought together other people. So it's interesting that often skilled-based volunteers can help attract other skilled-based volunteers. So pretty soon we had a whole group of experts, of highly skilled folks that were helping us do the work that we wanted to. Let me see if I can. He then started sharing this expertise and created presentations around the state. Let's see if I can, hang on a second here. I've got a weird pop-up here that I'm trying to, and then, hang on a second here. Then we go back to the slides again, hang on. I just messed up there, sorry about that. Audrey, do you want to help me there? Or, there we go, thank you. His presentation continued on where it became a bigger and bigger thing. Pretty soon, this one volunteer with our organization started making presentations. In this case, is a presentation to every employee in a school district. This one volunteer using his skills started a program that is now found everywhere in every school district in my area. One volunteer. Let me continue that with a story about Anne. Anne is a woman who came to me, and interesting note of how often volunteers will come to you if your organization is seen as a place that will lend their expertise. She loved music, wanted to share her passion with others. She had leadership experience in schools and PTAs, in her church groups. Anne began a parent-child music program. She also went out and raised the money for it, got her friends and family to do it, and ended up creating a home music program in the lowest income neighborhood in our community with recitals for children. In fact, the most recent recital I went to, this parent pride of a low-income family who's not used to having instruments in their home, seeing the pride of their children, all because a skilled volunteer said, I can share my skills. But let's go down and analyze what skills that volunteer had. That volunteer not only had music skills, that volunteer had other skills, organizational skills, leadership skills, speaking skills. So often volunteers in the skill-based world have more skills than they just look at on the surface. Let me give you just another quick thought here as we're talking about volunteers and skill-based. Sometimes volunteers come with very conspicuous skills that you can see. That person is they're in the trades. They're the electrician, a physician, a writer. Often, I think it's your job and our job to find skills that they may have that they may not even realize they have. So a lot of parallel skills that somebody will have as they go through their careers that we will help identify. We think often about helping school identify skills of our young college kids that are volunteering with us, or helping our young high school kids volunteering with us. We often forget that same goes with some of our older adults, that we will help them find hidden skills and develop hidden skills that they did not even know they had. Let me tell you another volunteer that came to me. Marin is an attorney. So you'd think that as an attorney, you'd be thinking, well, gee, let me have her do some legal work for me. And frankly, most of us only have so much legal work that we need to do. So Marin was passionate about children and a great analytical thinker. I think if you have attorney friends, you know that attorneys can question anything and really want to make sure there's backup for anything they say. So Marin started doing our academic research on our whole Everyday Strong program. She became our researcher. She created the logic model. She worked with academics to test and prove and challenge our theories. I would not have originally thought that would be the skill set to invite a lawyer to do, but she was phenomenal on it. Let's talk about Bruce. Bruce retired as director of a large software company. I don't know if any of you remember the old WordPerfect. Remember the old days of WordPerfect? He retired from WordPerfect at a fairly young age and wanted to volunteer, but he wanted to do more when he was just left at home as an early retiree. He basically felt that he always got assigned to help set up chairs for a church function or a local school function, and he was setting up chairs and sweeping floors. Not that that isn't good work, but he felt there was so much better way for him to volunteer, that he was not volunteering at his highest level of skill sets. So one of the principles that we want to talk about here when it comes to skill-based volunteering is using volunteers where possible at their highest skill level possible. Yes, it's true that some skilled volunteers say, okay, I've been an attorney all my life, I want to do something different. But you'd be amazed how many volunteers want to use their skills that they've honed and developed lifetime developing. So he started developing apps and software for us. And he developed our app for it's called 2-in-1 Utah. It's our 2-in-1 app about where to turn for help. Probably one of the nicest apps like that in the country that he developed. He got to the point that he had so many things that we wanted him to do that he now works with us as help us developing software. And he worked with some contractors in India, but he uses his expertise in doing that. And that's been just a phenomenal thing for us to do. Robin is a retired family nurse practitioner, 25 years retired from the Air Force. Robin once again said, well, I really want to use my skills at a higher level than just even simple tasks of or stuffing envelopes and sorting papers. So she actually helped create a whole program called Welcome Baby, which uses home visitors and volunteer home visitors. Remarkably successful. I sometimes like to tell my peers that one of the ways to make skilled volunteering work is to have a really big wish list. And you have to have a wish list bigger than you have a list of volunteers. I somewhat make the analogy similar to Christmas time when your mother used to, it depends on your age, whether it be if you're older than I am, the Montgomery Wards or Sears catalog, Christmas catalog came, the Toys R Us catalog came to you, whatever all the catalog, remember as a kid, when you would go through that catalog and you would circle the 25 toys or games that you wanted. When you did that, you realized when you did that Santa and or mom was not going to bring all those to you. And mom wisely chose the 2 or 3 things that you selected based often on what was on sale or what that would last longer. I think the same is true with skill-based volunteering, is that you have to be thinking about a long list of how you could use them and keep looking for that catalog to come by, or in this case, that right person to invite to volunteer for you. There are more people out there that want to help than you'll ever know. And we'll talk a little bit later about why there's an obstacle there. Let's talk about Bob. I know this picture looks funny, but this is Bob, a good friend. In fact, when I was putting this together yesterday, I called him up to see how he was doing. He retired and he was a former school superintendent. He wanted to make a difference, but he also wanted to spend time with his wife. He became a volunteer executive director of a volunteer medical clinic. So a skill-based volunteer actually became the CEO or executive director of an all-volunteer medical clinic. And then his wife works with him at the front desk of the clinic. They really do the work of 2 paid employees, and they love it. And they're not just working in the clinic, they're running the clinic. This volunteer clinic is using physicians, instructors in medical schools. And once again, you'd be amazed how many busy people want to help. This clinic, by the way, that's been now going for about 10 years, sees about 130 patients a week at an average cost of about $3.40 per patient. That is a low-cost clinic that provides phenomenal work. John and Janae, they're business owners. She is a blogger. She loves advocating for parents. She's I just say a social media extraordinaire. She just knows how to post about everything. And actually just finished, she'd been in college until just a few days ago. Janae became our social media consultant and blogger. And she actually now chairs our board. But her expertise and skills was all in the social media and her connections. Jorge, a retired city employee, human services, wanted to contribute. Joined our 2-on-1 team. I'm going to go through a few here, and then we'll break for some breakouts here. So then I have Larry. This one actually, I'm really excited by this one here. Larry's the assistant director and center for teaching and learning at a large university. He's a great organizer and knows how to teach. And I really didn't think I had any areas that need teaching skills. Until one day, one of my staff members said, we're short of a staff person to supervise a project. So Larry became my organizer of a large group project. He was phenomenal. He knows nothing about building. He knows nothing about painting, but he knows how to organize and teach. We have since used him year after year after year for some of our annual days of caring because of his great organizational skills. Once again, freeing up a staff person, but more making him and his family now feel a greater part of the community. Let me give you a couple other thoughts here, and I'm probably doing way too much talking here. You may also find skill-based volunteers in entire companies or organizations, where an entire organization may have that skill set. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Exactware, but it's the company, if you've ever had an insurance claim and they come to your home and they can instantly tell you how much it's going to cost to repair something, that's probably done by Exactware. The Exactware employees are phenomenal at construction projects, maintenance, fixing everything. In fact, a whole other story I could take. On the top of that picture is a community center that we help operate, that literally we spend less than $45,000 a year to run. And it's almost all done by volunteers. And that really is possible. Just some random areas, college students, great musicians. A group of college students said, I've got some musical talents. I have some evenings. And they started to organize another music program, teaching all sorts of interesting, fun skills. Well, be careful. My wife was a banker and my brother's a banker. So what skill sets do bankers have? And I don't ask that in any negative way. Bankers are phenomenal in dealing with resources, money, counting, organizing. And we've even used bankers. We've been recruited to banks, tellers at banks, at fundraising events to be the ones to count the money for us. So the skill sets in all sorts of different directions. Accounting students, of course, obviously could help with the tax program. Second language speakers, there are plenty of places you could use them at. Current and former high school athletes can be used in so many different areas and so many different arenas, and I won't even go into all the details of that. An area that I don't want to neglect when I come to skill-based is the category of parents. Parents have unique skill sets that we often forget about. And I think we make a mistake when we don't treat more of our volunteers as skill-based volunteers and acknowledge the skills that they have. Retailers are phenomenal organizers, and we've now learned to recruit from our local retailer friends a lot of our Christmas charity programs of the Sub for Santa angel trees that they can organize in ways that almost no one else can. Retired school teachers, and the whole series of areas that retired school teachers can help on. Tree cutters. I just had a group of from the university volunteers cut a series of trees, and if I would have paid for it, it would have probably cost me $30,000. So these volunteers are everywhere. So let's do some quick definition, then we'll go into a breakout here in a minute. A skill is the ability to do something well. It's expertise. And you throw that in, and I'm going to throw the other part of that, which is really coming from John McKnight's work in Careless Society. I think skill-based volunteers are really, we're trying to focus on the gifts they have to share, a natural ability or a talent. And that is really what we're looking at here, is trying to create help people shed their natural abilities and talents. To be more formal here, CNCS, the National Corporation for National Community Services, defines skills-based volunteering as means leveraging the specialized skills and talents of individuals to strengthen the infrastructure of nonprofits, helping them build and sustain their capacity to successfully achieve their missions. So we're going to break into groups in a second if Audrey's ready to help me. And I want you to answer two questions in your group breakouts. We're going to have you in groups for a few minutes. I really want you to first discuss where can skills-based volunteers be used in my community? What I'm really trying to say is where can you, in your own organization, use more skills-based volunteers? And that list should be a really fairly long list by the time you're done with it. So we're going to have you break into groups to do that. And in that group, I want you to answer that question. And then I want you to answer the question of what are the barriers to using skills-based volunteers. And I think, Audrey, as you're doing it, I think and looking at the time, I think we'll have both questions asked in one breakout here, just to save the in and out of that. If you do me a favor in the breakout, I want you to try to choose a leader. In fact, whoever's birthday is closest to today in your breakout gets to decide everyone's roles. Okay, everyone got that? Whoever's birthday is closest today gets to decide what role they have. And I want someone to be able to, when you're done with these 2 questions, I want to be able to come back and have you post that you want to present. And Audrey will open up the microphone and have you share your answers to these questions. So, Audrey, are we ready to break into that? And as we come back, I'll go through the questions that I missed and also try to answer the questions I see here.
Yeah, definitely. So for the breakouts, we are going to, they're in a slightly different area from here. So you will have to click the X at the top of this webinar. It'll take you back to the agenda, which is where you'll find the event menu. You'll have to click breakout number 2, using skills-based volunteers, the basic. From there, you can opt in to the different breakout rooms. So you'll want to come back in 11 o'clock, Bill?
Correct.
Yeah, so 15-ish minutes. So please make sure that you are monitoring the time and that you are all back in this room by 11 o'clock.
Does that sound good for everybody?
This is Audrey Kidwell again. So we are going to be joining breakout rooms. So at the top of your webinar, please click the X to exit out of this specific presentation. It'll take you back to the agenda, which is under the event menu list. From there, you'll click breakout 2, using skills-based volunteers, the basic. And once you're in, you can join any of the rooms. It allows up to 6 people per room. It is Zoom-based for you that have used Zoom. You can click into it, and then you can connect with fellow attendees to discuss the questions. Please be back by 11.
Audrey, there's Tiffany there who's saying she doesn't see the breakout rooms.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for your patience with us with this technology.
So if you are in this session, the one where we can see Bill, you actually don't have access to the breakouts. You'd have to actually leave this session physically, hit X, yes, I've finished the session, and go over to the agenda to click the breakout room.
Audrey, you've seen the questions that Tiffany and David are posting there. So
Let's see.
Tiffany, you're able to find it? Let me know, text us if you're not able to find that other spot.
Yep, I can see that some people have joined it. I do know that if you're in this session right now and you can hear me speaking, you can't see the breakout rooms because you have to physically leave this. And when I hit X, it rolls me to like the main page where I hit agenda. Track 2, it should be highlighted in yellow. If not, you can hang out here for just a few minutes because it, you know.
We're fun people. And Audrey, I'm thrilled we got the technology working.
I know.
So who's our session moderator here?
It's me and Lizzie Winchester with Volunteer Florida.
Gotcha. Okay, David's still having a problem there. Can you want to try to walk him through that again?
Yeah. So if you, again, exit out of this, you should be able to go to agenda. And it shows today, October 27th, and there should be a breakout room called Track 2, Breakout 2, Using Skills-Based Volunteer, highlighted in yellow. And then
We're sorry that it's clunky.
yeah, and then once you're in there, once you click that, it'll say, do you want to join this networking session? Yes, so once you hit X, you'll hit completed the course. And then once you have exited, and you can come back in, there's no, it says you're the only person in the other group. That is probably because there's not that many people that have joined. Yeah, there's lots of groups, 1 of 6. So I would suggest leaving that breakout room and then moving into a breakout room with someone else. Yeah, there's lots of 1 of 6.
Audrey, do you want to address Lewis's question there?
Yeah, hey Lou. I don't know actually. Because you should be able to join. Yeah, I'm not for sure what the problem is.
Thanks, Lewis. Do you want to address Concetta?
Yeah. So some of the breakouts, the ones at the top that show 0 out of 6 means that there's waiting for people to join. As you scroll down, you can see that there are breakout rooms that have 2 out of 6, 3 out of 6, and you're able to join those. You just can't join the ones that have 6 out of 6 because it's locked to keep just that maximum number.
So Tiffany got locked out. I feel for you, Tiffany.
Yeah, me too.
So go to a room that doesn't say 0, doesn't say 6, says 3 out of 6, 4 out of 6, something like that.
Yeah, and if not, you can hang tight for just
You
a
can
few
hang with
minutes.
us, but we'll be back together in 6 minutes. Sorry for the technology hiccups here. If you're not able to join a room, if you'll do me a favor and try to answer the 2 questions on your own, then you can participate in the discussion with the broader group. The first question is, where can skills-based volunteers be used in my community? And the second question is, what are the barriers to using skill-based volunteers? So I'll put on the screen here, the first question is, where can skills-based volunteers be used in my community? And that would be, and the second question, so if you're not able to join a group, just stay with us here for 5 more minutes. On your own, be answering on a piece of paper, where can skills-based volunteers be used in my community? I'm really more saying referring to in your own organization. I could use them as program designers. I could use them as coaches, whatever that would be. And the second question, which actually gets some of the more difficult questions, is what are the barriers to using skill-based volunteers? And I think you can find both internal and external barriers to that. Thank you, session moderator. Audrey, am I able to give you now, or should I just email you some people? Someone asked about the books of books that I have. I do have a printed bibliography of books.
Yeah, email over.
Email that to you, and I'll and we'll see if we can get that on, and we'll get that published up. And I have no problem putting the PDF of the slides up afterwards as well.
Okay.
So I just sent that to you. If you want to, Audrey, you want to put that up, and we'll.
Okay.
So Audrey, if they say their name, you can unmute them.
Yes, there should also be a raise my hand function. Yes, that would be easier probably for me to identify them.
Raise your hand. Okay. And that's under more? No. Oh, that's at the very bottom there. Okay, got it. There it is. Okay. So can we tell how many people are back?
Yeah. We are at 55. So definitely people are coming back.
Okay. Welcome back, everybody. We'll wait for a couple more people to get back to us, and we'll have the discussion on this. I'm hoping you had the technology worked somewhat for you. Had a few little glitches here, but who's not been on a meeting like this without a few glitches in the last 6 months? So. While people are coming back, I will, let me just throw a couple things out to you. I will be, so Stacy asked the question of, do I have a reading list? I did send to Audrey's going to post up on and link just a WordPerfect list of some of my favorite books on Community. That does not have Robert Putnam's latest book that I showed in the picture here on that list, but I think has some great questions and great things about Community. One of the favorite books that I always like to read, of course, is The Influence of the New Science of Change, how you actually persuade people. So I also see the recommended tool you can use to capture more insight. We'll come back and talk a little bit more of that at the very end. So now that we have people back, love to have some discussion, have somebody report out from their groups. I think the easier will be if you'll raise your hand, and the raise your hand button is found at the, can you remind it? I saw it once and I don't see it. It's on the bottom of the chat is a raise your hand button. If you'd raise your hand, we'll then be able to unmute your microphone. And we can start there and also see, I'm saying it's session moderator 53, okay, it's 53, 55, those numbers come back, great. So raising your hand, do we have anyone could raise their hand and participate and give us an answer to these two questions? Audrey, you able to see any hands up? Oh,
I do not. Let's see.
We're sorry for the technology glitches here, folks. And if the hand should be on the bottom of the chat screen. There should be a spot where you can hit raise the hand.
Yes, and I believe Callie is unmuted, so she can share first.
So go ahead and tell us introduce yourselves and help me answer these questions here. Who is that again?
That was Callie, and if she wasn't able to get through, we can move on to somebody else.
Callie, are you there? Okay, do we have another one there?
How about Caitlin? Caitlin, are you? I just unmuted you, so you can feel free to share.
Caitlin, are you there?
Mm-hmm.
Caitlin, tell us who you are. Caitlin?
How about Tiffany, since she is talking in the chat as well. Feel free to share, Tiffany.
It sounds like our technology is not working well for this. So let me just share with you instead, which is you're going to get really tired of my voice. If you think you can share, we'll have you type a message, or maybe just start typing some messages instead. But where can skills-based volunteers be used in my community? As we review that historically, as we've done these discussions, one almost right answer is everywhere. And there's so many different skills that people have that we not always know about. That skill set could be in the area that we often forget about could be in not only volunteering at a high level, but can be running programs, designing programs, evaluating programs. That skill set can be something as specific as painting a mural or painting a wall. If you've been in the volunteer sector very long, you know that when it comes to painting walls in nonprofits, that most of our nonprofits have about 83 coats of paint put on by very unskilled volunteers. Wouldn't help to throw a few skilled volunteers on that. Anybody want to just put in the chat a couple of other areas that we've missed that we can use, where we can use skills-based volunteers? You might just type it in the chat, some answers to that one. And Tiffany's still raising her hand, but we were never to get her voice. Should we try Tiffany or Colleen one more time?
Tiffany is unmuted, so if she can speak, we can definitely try.
I think we're going to assume that we don't have our technology working perfectly well here. So I'm seeing some good answers here about the barriers. On barrier part, on the barrier part, so we have the skills base of lots of places. Let's talk about the barriers. I'm seeing some great obstacles of barriers. Often the barriers is us or our own culture. The barriers historically have been, let me give you just a couple candid areas that I have historically seen barriers. I have seen in my short career of 3.5 decades that a lot of our young staff right out of college are very intimidated by volunteers that are a lot older than them. I have found that, so we have a barrier can be the intimidation factor. The barrier can be that we're afraid, it can be the control factor. What happens if that skilled volunteer has an idea different than ours? The barrier can be a confidence factor on our own behalf. Do I have the confidence to ask them? The barrier sometimes is even money. Sometimes that skill-based volunteer wants to do something at a higher level than we have the resources to do. But the barrier most often, in my opinion, is an internal cultural barrier. If you're not aware, the reason most people don't volunteer or don't last in volunteering, they will officially use the term, I don't have time. What the meaning is they don't feel like they're being valued or they're not making a difference. So my contention on skill-based, the barrier, the number one skill-based volunteer barrier is our own internal culture. That we do not make them feel welcomed, we don't make them feel respected, aren't efficient with use of their time. But in that same respects, the barrier is that we often say no for others. We often assume that somebody's going to tell us no. And in my experience of volunteering and in raising money, is never say no for someone else. No one is offended when you ask them to help you. In fact, most of us felt like it's a reward. Someone just said they can't hear me. Do they? Am I still on there?
I can still hear you, Bill.
Okay, great. Okay. So Abby, recovering perfectionist with controlling tendencies. Thank you for that, that very kind of thing. But that's often our barrier, is they won't do it our way, and we want to control it, and we can't meet their expectations. Let me just kind of summarize this just in a few ways here. Skills-based volunteering is a way for us to expand our missions, expand the impact of our missions, not expand the mission, expand the impact of our missions, but also to greatly strengthen our communities. I am really, really intrigued by this concept that we're needed more than ever before, that we can be the glue that brings us back together and that unifies us. I like this point, but often barrier is lack of clear job descriptions. So often we're just saying, oh, go do something like this. Lack of clear description. And I think the barrier before the lack of clear job description is a lack of clear vision of what can be done. If we don't have the clear vision of what can be done, then the job descriptions even gets muddier. I appreciate your comments here. We have about 5 more minutes. And here's some great comments. And I hope you're all reading some of the chats here, a place where we get job descriptions, etc. But volunteers want to make a difference. It's in with all people go to college, they can make a difference in the world. People do jobs. The idea that we want to make a difference is within all of us. We want to have meaning. And what a great way to do that in volunteerism. I'm going to just share a picture here to kind of close up with a story here about one more principle that I learned in my college days. I actually, my way home, as I was working on this presentation last night, I thought of an experience I wanted to share. So I went and took this picture of a house right around the corner from where I was a college student. And by the way, if you my Florida friends here, those things in the background are called mountains. Just want to make sure you knew what those were. At this house when I was a college student, a lady by the name of Bertha Christensen lived in this home. And I was part of a college volunteer program, and I would go visit her as part of an adopt a grandparent program. The adopt a grandparent program was designed that I was supposed to go help visit the a homebound senior. And when I was visiting, when I was a young college student, I thought this lady was in my mind, she was probably 110. But she really was, she's probably in her 80s. Every time I go to her house, she'd play honky tonk piano. She'd bounce all over the piano playing music for me every time I went to visit her. It was an amazing experience. Years later, I reflected on the fact that when I visited her was always when I was down. I realized that when I visited her is when I got dumped by a girl, when I did bad on a test, when I hated a roommate, when I was behind a project or whatever, I went and visited her. I learned at that moment that in serving, that I was not only serving her, she was serving me. So when we think about skill-based volunteers, I want us to think about the concept of mutual reciprocity. If we invite skill-based volunteers on the idea that they're only helping us, we're going to miss the mark. If we invite skill-based volunteers and realizing that we have things back to them to help on, we will be hitting the mark. So it's very different to saying, would you come help me? But when you realize when you're asking them to come help you, that you're also helping them and meeting their needs. So the perfect volunteer opportunity is matching those needs of yours and theirs. As I see in these comments, there's so many different ways to try to understand who our skill-based volunteers are. I'm going to kind of quote Tom Peters, who wrote the great book In Search of Excellence decades ago, used to wear a hat, he put an MBWA, Management by Walking Around. I think there are some hidden ways to discover who these talents are, but it starts by talking to people. It starts by listening and observing. It starts by being part of the casual conversations that find these hidden skills. I am amazed how many hidden skills I find in my own organization, in my own family, in my own neighborhood, from artists to lecturers to researchers. These volunteers are everywhere, and volunteers want to be needed, and we need them. There's a lot of great questions here, and we're basically have like one more minute here. So let me just conclude by saying, start with the big picture of why you need volunteers. Start with the big picture, then work your way down to the nitty-gritty of strategies and applications, but start with the big vision. People want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. Later this afternoon, if you're joining me, we'll be talking more about specifically recruiting and marketing efforts to recruit folks. But I just want to let you know that we need our community members more than ever before, and they need us. Thank you very much, and once again, apologize for some of those technology hiccups. Audrey?
Yeah, thank you everybody for attending. The next session begins at 11:30. Again, you'll go back to the main session, the agenda, where you can choose between track 1 and track 2. There's descriptions of each of those for you and your choosing. This information, along with some handouts that Bill provided, will be uploaded into the console for you to access after this session. And as always, please make sure to fill out your survey so we can better assist you in the future. Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye, Bill. I'll see you after lunch.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Bye.